I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanakeims.
All right, so first play we're going to look at 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks and Game Time. Today, I am joined by, well, you already know who I'm joined by. You know him, you love him, one of the OG patriarchs of CLNS Media when it comes to Patriots coverage, the Evan Lazar. I'm so excited. I can't even get my words out. Evan, welcome back, buddy, for another Mailbag episode. Thank you for rejoining. And how the heck are you doing? Almost there, baby. Week 1 coming up.
I know. I'm excited. I'm really excited to get this going. And we've been dealing in so many hypotheticals and looking at teams on paper and all this kind of stuff over the last couple months. And it'll be good to finally get some real games to sink our teeth into and see what this team is made of.
Hell yeah, brother. So before we get into the mailbag questions, I do want to touch on what happened when we were at Gillette today. We heard from Gerard Mayo. It was very different not getting the Bill Belichick, very brief scouting report at the beginning of everything. It was really just like, our guys are ready, very much internal. We heard from Jacoby Brissett a little bit, spoke about the offensive line, talked about what it meant being a captain, and we got an injury report, which I will read off really quickly. Did not participate, City, so that was expected. He wasn't in uniform today at practice. Jonathan Jones with a hamstring, Vidarian Lowe with an abdomen, Joshua Uche with a foot, and O'Shane Zimenez were all limited. Zimenez with an ankle, so obviously not looking great in the trenches on either side of the ball. Full participants, though, we had Christian Ellis, who was dealing with a concussion, Hunter Henry, who was dealing with a foot, Anthony Jennings with a wrist, and Dietrich Wise Jr. with a hamstring. So threw a lot at you, but just basically to put a bow on everything that we learned today, what were your takeaways from what we heard from Mayo, what we heard from Jacoby, and what the injury situation is looking like right now for New England? Obviously still pretty early in the week.
Yeah, let's go in reverse order because I think that's the easiest way to tackle all three of those things. So go with the injury report first. Not any major surprises. City So doesn't look like he's trending towards playing on Sunday, and we're probably going to get some combination of Nick Leverett and Michael Jordan at left guard. Maybe that's a rotation. That some of those guys probably will rotate anyways, just being week 1, and maybe they're in an actual platoon there at left guard. And then Vidarian Lowe status. I know we've talked about this a bunch off the air, and I get a lot of heat for this on our shows because I kind of come to Vidarian Lowe's defense, like just a little bit. And I know it comes off as I'm saying he's, prime Joe Thomas or something like that. And obviously we recognize together that that's not the case, but they don't have a whole lot of great options at left tackle. And if I had to say who's the best equipped to play left tackle in week 1, it's probably Vidarian Lowe. I know that's not a very high bar, but that's sort of where we're at. And if he can push to play on Sunday, then I do think it puts everybody else, mainly Chukwuekorfor, back on the right side, and things can start to be a little bit more everybody in their natural spots, right? And that's sort of where I'm at with the offensive line. You're probably not going to have a ton of talent on the field in some spots on the line. So let's at least get everybody in a spot that they're accustomed to playing.
100%. And especially that left side, man, it is really worrisome because obviously when all the pieces are together, you still have your concerns because City So and Layden Robinson have both looked good, but they were competing at left guard because City So wasn't consistent in the preseason. Then that last Commanders game, as good as Layden Robinson's been, he got put on his heels a few times, led to some really bad plays. And then on the edges, I think we understand that they have to work with what they have and that tackle options aren't great throughout the entire NFL. There aren't a lot of teams with one good tackle, much less two, but at least Chooks is someone with starting experience on the right side. Actually, it's going to be in my matchup piece, but on the left side is preseason, small sample size, but his pressure rate was almost double than what it was when he was on the right, where he's clearly more comfortable. And then Vidarian Lowe, where last season it was the same for him, where on the right he had a really hard time, and on the left he was much better. Not the best option, but in this Scott Peters strike system, which we'll get into a bit later, you really have seen how the improvement is looked with his hands and how he can use his length to his advantage. Now let's get to the pressers, all right? Jacoby Brissett and Gerard Mayo. We don't have to go too long, but what were your big takeaways from what those guys had to say today?
Well, I feel like with Gerard Mayo, he's just starting up front, and we just kind of piggyback off the injury report there. his big message was control the line of scrimmage. That's item number one on their list. And we know that might be difficult, especially on the offensive side of the ball. You got Trey Hendrickson. Sam Hubbard's not a bad player for Cincinnati. They have some guys up front that can give you problems, especially Hendrickson coming off the left side, most likely. So that's a problem spot or a warning spot for them. But hearing Mayo, it does sound like they're going to want to establish the run and do that whole thing and win the line of scrimmage and try to be the tougher, more run productive football team, because I feel like they know if they get into any sort of higher scoring shootout with the Bengals, and it's going to be a long afternoon for them.
100%. And obviously all those things are cliches. Like I think Jacoby or Gerard mentioned, these are the things you always hear, but cliches are there for a reason. And truly that is how you win when you don't have a superstar quarterback. You need to lean on your ground game. You want to be the more physical team either way. We've seen that with even KC, where in the recent seasons, they've really been more physical than they have, the earlier Patrick Mahomes years where he's really slinging it. Now it seems like they're trying to combine those, of course. But I totally agree. Hopefully they can actually get that done. Trey Hendrickson especially is going to be a handful. Actually, one more thing I'll touch on before we dive into the mailbag, because it wasn't really touched on in the questions that we got. But with Jamarr Chase, he was at practice today. He was limited, but had his helmet on. He was in uniform. That's been a change of pace as he's been a hold in with his contract situation. T. Higgins, Christian Gonzalez called those guys a two-headed monster. Even in the slot, the young receiver they've got, I'm so sorry, I don't know his last name. Andre is Baldy or something like that? I
think it's Ilyasova is how you say it. Close. But I've heard 17 different pronunciations of it this week, so that's what I would go with. But between him and Charlie Jones, those seem to be the two slot guys.
Yeah, and even now that they have Christian Gonzalez, the guys that you'd expect to play the most snaps for these cornerbacks are going to be Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones, who still do have that height disadvantage we saw back in 2022 when the Patriots were one of the most bend but don't break game plans we've seen in the past few years for them, where they were like, we know we're small, but you're not getting behind us, and we're just going to have to come up and tackle. Gerard Mayo mentioned that led to some situations like second and longs and third downs where they ended up converting because there was just so much space to work with underneath with those big bodies. But when it comes to the game plan here, they do have Christian Gonzalez. How do you think they go about handling Jamarr Chase and T. Higgins? Are we going to see Gonzo's shadow? Are we going to see him stick to the boundary? Are they going to double one guy and then leave the other one-on-one? How do you see this working out for them?
Yeah, just first off with Jamarr Chase, it seems, and look, I get it. He's an excellent player, and maybe he can just walk off the bus without any training camp and without any practice and go play 70 snaps on Sunday. I'm not going to say he can't because he's like a superstar, like superhuman. So like maybe it's possible, but you look at him, to me, it feels more realistic to think that he plays like 20 to 25, like really high leverage kind of snaps, third down, red zone, like that sort of thing. They have a package of plays in the game plan where he feels comfortable running those plays. Then he just steps right back in and plays 100% of the snaps. So with that being said, that could obviously change how this game plan comes about. But one of my big questions with the Patriots heading into the season, and it's just really surrounds Gonzo, is can Christian Gonzalez be good enough on his own that they can be a little bit more aggressive with how they call the defense in the front seven? I really feel like they're trying to trend more towards those like Brian Flores 2019 era Patriots, where they're coming after quarterbacks. But in order to do that, they had Stephon Gilmore, who was just an absolute defensive player of the year caliber corner. I'm not trying to put that on Gonzo yet. Like, I don't know if he's there yet. So for this matchup, I look at T. Higgins. I feel like Gonzo can match up against T. Higgins one-on-one. And if he gives up some plays, he gives up some plays. But you hope that it's not one big or two big plays. It's let him march. And if it's 8 catches for 90 yards, then that's great, right? That's a win for the Patriots with him one-on-one with T. Higgins. When Jamarr Chase comes into the game, that's maybe when you bracket him, send some extra attention, tilt the safety that way, play those cover 2 shells that they played so much of in 2022, like do that sort of thing. Because I still feel like Gonzo is maybe not quite ready to throw him into the fire where you're one-on-one against Chase for 4 quarters. Whereas with Higgins, maybe he can go toe-to-toe with him for a while.
And of course, you can make the argument that like he pretty much did that Gonzo in last season's opener against AJ Brown. But even though AJ Brown and Jamarr Chase are both just absolute freaks of nature and true alpha receivers, they are different types of players. I also wonder if we're going to see a decent amount of Marco Wilson. I think they have enough practice squad elevation guys, but like Bolden, just guys who can give them more size at corner, because I don't think you're really worried about Jonathan Jones getting picked on necessarily. His technique is usually good enough to make up for some of his height difficulties, but you still don't love that matchup if he's against a Jamarr Chase or a T. Higgins. And even in the slot, they got a lot of size. And Marcus Jones did get picked on, although he was outside last matchup. So kind of like last year where we saw them rotate outside of Gonzo, it was like John Jones and Marcus Jones, different kind of guys. I think we'll see some kind of rotation like that just to kind of get them some bigger bodies on the perimeter. All right, we are going to jump into your mailbag questions, but first, quick word from our friends at Prize Picks. Be right back.
Prize Picks this time, and they are America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. With over 5 million active members, it's the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action this football season. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Prize Picks is actually running a promo for the month of September where one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you a win on Prize Picks. It's the entire week of September, so you can use that one passing yard as one of your blocks and watch the winnings roll in. You can see it on the screen in front of me. Caleb Williams right now. The over-under is 255.5, or the more or less, rather. But it is 1 yard for Caleb Williams. So make sure to use that and put your Prize Picks together on the app. Download it today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get those $50. It's guaranteed. That's Prize Picks. Run your game.
Damn, that read made me miss Mike. Oh man, that was fantastic. All right, now let's start off with some kind of fun. Who will lead the Patriots in receptions and receiving yards? I feel like there's one candidate that one of these is going to slide into one of these, but I also feel like they could be different people for each. But what do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm pretty bullish on Pop Douglas still. I understand that he's got the injury concerns with his size and his durability from last year. He got banged up here or there, and you're going to have to manage that to an extent. And maybe they look at it, especially early on in the season, and we're just talking about Jamarr Chase in high leverage situations. Maybe Pop Douglas is one of those guys where they really only go to him on third down, or they really only go to him when they need a big play or something along those lines instead of feeding him high volume. So long story short, he might not get to the receptions and yards leader because of that. But I still would say that he's the leader in the clubhouse to me to lead the team right now in receiving.
Yeah, I think that Pop could probably lead in receiving yards because I don't know if I like him as a high volume target because of obviously the health concerns, the size and all those things. But I do think he has way more big play potential than we were able to see last year because they couldn't get him the ball downfield. And we'll see him be more of a 3-level threat. But in terms of guys they might just feed the ball to, I could see that being Jalen Polk. Because as much as I like KJ Osborne, I think he'll be in for the wide receivers, maybe the third leading receiver because he did have a good summer in his own right. Jalen Polk just seems like someone they're going to want to get involved. He gives you that 3-level ability. And I just think with his hands and how reliable he's been, at some point he's going to catch fire this season. Might be up and down. Of course, he's a rookie, but I could see him being the guy where when they really are trying to feed someone the ball, especially in those high leverage situations, it's going to be Pop and maybe we saw against Miami last year with Kendrick Bourne's touchdown. Sometimes maybe Pop's going to get a bit of a bracket coverage, and then Jalen Polk can capitalize either on the outside or on the inside.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth to Jalen Polk. Like my inner self is struggling with him because he's not typically the brand of receiver that I gravitate towards when we're doing the draft and things like that. I'll admit I'm a sucker for speed. I'm a sucker for separation, like route running technicians, like those types of guys. And on Polk's college film, you just see a lot of, his hands are great. There's no doubt about that. But you see a lot of those kind of like contested go routes and things like that at Washington. But they convinced me a little bit because, Tyler Hughes, the wide receivers coach, was with him at Washington. I remember having a conversation with him, and he said that offense didn't really allow Jalen Polk to be the route runner that he is going to be at this level because of what they were trying to do schematically. They ran a lot of vertical stem stuff at Washington. It wasn't a whole lot of, route breaks at the top or quick changes of direction. It was a lot of four verts and, that kind of stuff. So they feel like he's going to be a better route runner or showcase better route running at this level than he did in college. And maybe that's one of the things that bringing Tyler Hughes from Washington gave them some insight into that other teams might not necessarily had.
That is very exciting. And I feel like we did definitely see some glimpses of that this summer. So it's going to be exciting to actually see in a game. But you mentioned speed. So obviously we talked about all the other guys that are probably going to start.
Yeah.
We got to talk about Mr. X receiver Tyquan Thornton. Really had the job locked down anytime he was healthy enough to be on the field and participating. Now, he did have a better preseason and really summer overall than I think all of us anticipated. The route running, still plenty of work to do. Looks way better than last season when he's going up against Emmanuel Forbes getting locked down. So what did you think of Tyquan Thornton this summer? And what are your expectations for him, at least early on this season?
That's my guy. This is the guy that I've taken the cheese on Tyquan Thornton 3 years in a row. So you might as well just add it to the mix. I think the biggest thing to me with Tyquan is it's twofold. One, this scheme fits him so much better than the last offense did. Like the last offense, when you're trying to convert every route and read out coverages and break at the top of the route, and the timing and all this has to be perfect with the quarterback and all these different elements of like the McDaniels, O'Brien, Patriots style offenses, just never was a great fit for a guy that really should just be running down the field in a straight line. So you get him in this offense, you see it on film where, he runs a go route against Carolina in the preseason opener. Like if Jacoby Brissett starts on that side of the field, that's probably a big play, but he had to come back to it on the backside of the progression. You see it even on the throw to Jalen Polk, where he's just occupying the safety over the top. It's not that he's getting targeted, but he's just drawing that post safety in the middle of the field to respect that vertical route. I'm not expecting Tyquan Thornton to be 1,000-yard receiver. I don't think anybody is. But with this offense, so many of these guys that we're talking about have very specific traits that could lend themselves to being okay role players. Like Jalen Polk has that intermediate thing going. He could possibly be in that level of a solid chain moving receiver. Tyquan Thornton could be a vertical guy. Like he could just play that role really, really well. So that's what I'm hoping for with Tyquan. I don't expect high volume. I don't expect this big breakout season after 2 kind of lackluster years. But I do think he can play a role within the offense that can be productive, even if it's away from the ball.
And like you mentioned, a lot of it's maybe just going to be his presence and occupying space. But even just looking at this Bengals game, when you look at how they defended Jacoby Brissett in 2022, when this team goes under center, the Bengals are going to play cover one, and they're going to get a lot of one-on-one matchups with Patriots.
Yeah.
That's going to be the time where a couple of those are going to be play action at least. Can you get Tyquan the ball downfield, maybe with some air under it so he can run and not only just get, a triple, actually make it a home run? That's where his role in this offense could really shine because, like you said, he's not going to be the route running savant necessarily, just has to be good enough and give you some kind of verticality. All right, spent a long time on that. But, the receivers are such a big kind of conversation, and we're going to get into the offensive line plenty anyway. So, all right, how do you guys think the pass rush will do considering the loss of Judon? And then I'll add, of course, Christian Barmore being out indefinitely.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Well, first of all, just off the top, it was cool to see Barmore in the locker room today. I would say he was in good spirits, but you can tell that he's just pissed off that he's not playing football right now. So I feel for him, but it was good to see him being around the team. He was talking to Daniel Aquale when I saw him and just kind of chatting and whatnot. So it was cool to see him. In terms of the pass rush, we talked a little bit about this earlier with Gonzo and that whole conversation. The biggest thing to me is, can they rely on this back end to cover with 4 or 5 guys back there to try to get after quarterbacks? Because if they can, then they can kind of get away with some of this pass rush that they've lost in Barmore and Judon. I go back to that team in 2018, that my first year on the beat. Trey Flowers was their best pass rusher on that team. No disrespect to Trey Flowers at all, but he's not the sack guy that Matthew Judon was, right? Like he wasn't one of those guys that was going to have double-digit sacks throughout a healthy season. But what he was really disruptive. His pressure numbers were always very good. His versatility was very good. Reminds me a little bit of Keon White, where like you can move this guy around and he can hunt matchups on the line of scrimmage inside or outside. And he might not finish a ton of plays, but he's going to be in the backfield on a lot of plays. And you look at that and you could say, all right, well, if we can get some free runners, if we can get some blitz packages going and things of that nature, then we could be all right without the fact that we don't have a one-on-one winner that we can just kind of hang our hat on like a Matthew Judon. So it's a long-winded way of saying if that back end, it can be a strength. Gonzo, Jonathan Jones, the two safeties, Peppers, Duggar, then they can get away with zero blitzing a little bit here and there. They can get away with doing some of the more aggressive stuff that we know is in their playbook. If it's not good in the back end, then they're going to have to play 7 in coverage. And then that's when you start to worry. But I'm not worried yet about the pass rush because I do feel like this back end is going to be pretty strong.
Absolutely. Keion White and Dietrich Wise, a guy who I feel like really doesn't get a lot of recognition. Last year, he wasn't quite as productive as he's been in years past, so I kind of understand. But we started in the preseason. The guy didn't play a lot, but he made a very big impact anytime he was on the field. And Gerard Mayo mentioned after one preseason game how, like in those eras where the Patriots' second dynasty, they didn't have a ton of elite rushers. Even Trey Flowers wasn't really a Chandler Jones type, but a lot of their success came on those line games with Kyle Van Noy, Dante Hightower, Jamie Collins. Those guys had such great chemistry and an ability to create enough disruption and open up lanes for other people. My issue with that plan is, if that is what the Patriots are going to do, is that does take chemistry. It takes timing. It takes a feel for what other guys are doing around you. I felt like in the preseason, you didn't see that. It felt like they were trying to have some twists and line games, and it felt like guys were just running into each other, which is one thing in the preseason. In real games, if you're going up against Joe Burrow and he can feel that there's no one on the edge and it's 3rd and 5, we even saw in 2022, he's going to take advantage of that, even though he's not really a burner. So the back end, it's going to kind of be the opposite of last year, where you didn't realize much on the back end. You really were hoping Christian Barmore and maybe Joshua Uche would be enough to cause some disruption and maybe speed things up a little bit. Now the pressure is on the back end, and you're hoping that Keion White obviously takes a step forward. Joshua Uche can maybe be a little bit more impactful than he was last year. Maybe even O'Shane Zimenez, who I've been a fan of. I really like his play style. Not great at anything, but truly a jack of all trades type. And someone that Jonathan Jones said could surprise people this year. So obviously marriage is always important on defense, but if they're going to try to generate a pass rush up front outside of the zero blitzing and things like that, they're going to have to find some way to get that chemistry together inside, or of course rely on Wise and Keion White. All right, which position group matchup do the Patriots have an advantage in this week against the Bengals? This one, I'm not gonna lie, this one's pretty tough.
Yeah, this is pretty tough to come up with one. The one, just listening to some of the Bengals, we had our show earlier today, and one of the Bengals beat reporters, Ben Baby, he called in from ESPN.com. We're talking to him, and the Bengals run defense is a question mark for people in Cincinnati right now. They weren't very good last year. They lose DJ Reader, who is probably their best inside player on the defensive line. They're trying to replace him with Sheldon Rankins, who's like a little bit more of an upfield pass rush type of player. So if I had to say one thing, and I know left guard is a big question mark for the Patriots right now, but maybe it's like the right side of their offensive line against the Bengals defensive line on Onwenu, Robinson, Andrews obviously coming over. They should be able to open up some room for the running backs with that combination. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to run for 200 yards, but I'm like cautiously optimistic based off of what some of the Bengals people are saying that they have some areas where they might be able to run the ball.
Exactly. They are a very disruptive unit. And I mean, Scott Peters is very familiar with this Bengals defense. So he knows exactly what this offensive line is going to have to do, backups or not, to have success. Obviously, planning and execution are two different things. But if the Patriots are going to have any way of winning this game, it does feel like Gerard Mayo said it. They have to control the line of scrimmage. I'll go to the other side of the ball with the defensive interior. I do think they have an advantage against this Bengals team. Now, Ted Karras is a good player. He's, I think, one of the better centers in football, so I don't want to overlook him. But at the guard spots, Cordell Volson and Alex Kappa don't inspire a ton of confidence, especially if the Patriots do get in some obvious passing situations and they can kick their really premier edge rushers inside. And even Daniel Ekwale, he's a solid player. Shorter arms, which really limits his ability to finish plays consistently, but he knows how to take on blocks, occupy space, and win with technique. And then even Jeremiah Farms, a guy who I've been pretty high on. I think he's going to be heavily involved in this rotation. Didn't have a great finale to the preseason, but even going back to the end of last season, he really came on and was consistently disruptive without making a ton of mistakes. And of course, Devon Godchall, the man in the middle, That's not going to be easy for Ted Karras in those running situations. So probably the advantages are on the, like you said, the run game for the Patriots offense. For the defense, it looks like they probably do have a step up on the interior. All right, let's see what we got. I've been clicking on the same button and it's not doing anything. I think my computer's spazzing out. We're back. Okay, let me find our next question. All right. What would you consider a positive day for the offense against a Lou Anarumo defense on the road? A defense that Gerard Mayo mentioned, they send these pressure packages. You really don't know where it's coming from. They send corners, they send safeties, they send linebackers. That was the big thing that Gerard Mayo mentioned. And, of course, the versatility they have to do those different things. So what's a positive day?
Yeah, look, first of all, Anarumo, to me, is going to be a head coach in the league. If it's not next year, it will be soon. He's on that track right now, and he's an impressive coordinator. When you watch their tape, you just see how sound they are at all three levels of the defense. I think first and foremost, like obviously they do some schematic stuff and they have some twists here and there, but I wouldn't say it's, they're going to face McDonald the next week again from Seattle, and then he comes to town. Like, I feel like that defense is much more exotic, where like they have all these different things that they throw at you in the pressure package. But with Anarumo, it's much more like they are just really, they don't beat themselves. So that's impressive to me with them. I would say the biggest thing in terms of success that I'm looking for is early down offense. Like, can this team be more dynamic on first and second down than what we've seen over the last couple of years? People like us might look at that a little bit more than others on the outside that look at third down, red zone, like those types of situations. I'm all about first and second down. Like, if you're not generating explosives as a first down, second down play action team, then the league is going to eat you alive if you're in third and long all the time. Talk about Anarumo's pressure package. Well, the best way to avoid that is to not be in third down, right? So if you can get into first and second down, you talked earlier about some of the things the Bengals did against this Browns offense in 2022, a lot of single high, a lot of man coverage. Like, those are opportunities to me. If I'm Jacoby Brissett, I'm thinking I'm hunting. Like, I understand my receivers aren't Jamarr Chase and T. Higgins, but these are NFL receivers. Like, let's give Pop and Polk and Thornton, Osborne, like, let's give these guys some chances down the field in those matchups and see if we can win a few. So that's what I'm definitely looking at. The third down stuff, the red zone stuff, obviously important too. But if they can get this whole thing going, the run game, the play action off of it, the wide zone, like all this stuff we've been talking about for months, then I'm going to feel a lot better about the offense.
Absolutely. And just going back to Lou Anarumo's defense overall, it reminds you of the Patriots when you watch it because of how sound they are. Another one of the best tackling teams in the league, which usually is a pretty good indicator of how well coached you are. And you mentioned that pressure package. So Jacoby Brissett was actually very good on third downs when they last played. They weren't always great in early downs, and there were some long yardage situations. But Kevin Stefanski and Alex Van Pelt did a really good job flooding their zone coverages, knowing when to kind of dial those plays up. But then the biggest thing was the Browns were also able to capitalize on one-on-one matchups. Now, most of those went to Amari Cooper. The Patriots don't have an Amari Cooper, so they're going to have to maybe spread the ball around and find the right matchups to attack in certain situations. But I think that's maybe going to be the biggest thing for me. And Jacoby Brissett also mentioned the early down success is going to be big. When you've got opportunities, you have to take advantage of them. And then the biggest thing, especially considering what happened in the last preseason game, is going to be not hurting yourselves with penalties. Like, watching that Patriots offense last year, as frustrating as it was not seeing them take advantage of those opportunities, like the Mike Gesicki touchdown, obviously in Germany, is like the most glaring example of you have a game-winning score and you kind of pass it up. It's more frustrating when first down turns into first and 15 or first and 20 or second and 10, which is already bad enough, turn into second and 15. And then you're like, all right, well, we're kind of getting into the plays in the playbook where we really don't expect to convert. So early down success, I think, will definitely be the sticking point. Run game success. And when you have those one-on-one matchups that you like, you have to capitalize on those. All right, we're going to take one more before we get into the comment section, because I want to make sure we answer some of your guys' questions live as well. Let me find the best one here. All right. Little strike system talk, because I actually want to hear your perspective on this too. So I've heard mentioned several times that new O-line coach Scott Peters has a radically different hand placement strike system methodology. Have you yet to see it explained, or can you do so?
It's a good question. I can explain elements of it. You might have dug a little bit even deeper than I have into the actual mechanics of the strike system, but more or less, it's basically just coming up with counters for like what the defensive line is going to do. If they are, long arm you, like this is the strike that we coach, you to beat the long arm. If they are two hand swipe, if they're, rip move, like all these different things that defensive linemen use. If they're two gapping, like this is how we want to put our hands. You also see like, when you hear them in practice, it seems like they have like different ranges of the chest that they try to hit. Like 0 is right down the middle. 3 is maybe more on the outside. And he'll talk about like, we want a 3 here. We want a 3 here, right? Which means like a little bit more on the outside, like underneath the armpit almost, to try to get some leverage there. So those are the different things. What I find fascinating, and it's going to be something like I might poke around with in a month or two into the season once they start to really play real football, is like some guys to me might be almost too complicated, and that's one thing that I'm interested in. Is like, is this simpler or is it actually more complicated? There's a lot of things that you hear him throw at guys, and some guys might not take to it as much as others, but some of the younger guys seem to be taking to it pretty well because it's just it's an answer to the test, right? Like I can't go wrong. If coach is telling me when he long arms me that he wants me to chop down on that arm, that's what I'm going to do. And if it doesn't go well, that was what I was told to do.
Exactly. And I think that's why they targeted young or guys with more experience and guys who are really smart, like Caden Wallace, obviously, like we heard about it, like his brother's an oyster farmer and all that, comes from a very smart family. I actually do have the strike system codes all put up for a better idea there. So like you mentioned, Evan, the strikes all have different numbers, which basically just tell you how you want the initial interaction to go. The sets are how you want these guys to kick out. So are you kind of cutting off the angle and really trying to attack? Are you taking more of a vertical set? Just different ways to get out of the stance. Then the counters are probably the most difficult part of this whole thing because the other two are pretty set in stone where, in certain situations he teaches, these are the combinations I want you to use. The counters are where, okay, I've done that, but then the defensive lineman did this as well. And that's what a lot of these guys have really been raving about is, now I understand if this guy does this, I do this, because they know how to handle different types of permutations and pass rush moves. And one guy that you've seen that really work really all over the offensive line, like I asked Chooks Okorafor about the fact that in that Commanders game, there were like 10 bodies on the ground in pass protection, which is not something you usually see. And there's been a lot of that snatch trap technique where when the defender's pads get really high, you just hit his arms down and the guy loses balance. And that's a big thing Scott Peters teaches with the independent hands. Because if you're shooting both and your pad level's bad, you're basically giving up the rep. That was a huge problem for the Patriots last year. And this strike system is a big reason I think we've seen growth from guys like Sidy So, Vidarian Lowe. And then you've seen guys like Mike Nwaneri and David Andrews also take to it and look good when they're using it. All right, we are going to get into the comments section and answer some of your wonderful questions. But first, quick word from our friends at Game Time. Be right back.
The Patriots are playing the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. You can get in over at Paycor Stadium for the lowest price guaranteed with Game Time. They have a new feature. It's called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets to your favorite teams play, to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. We're going to do a live read right now, Taylor, with the B-roll, and I'm going to go on the Game Time app on my cell phone and check out just how much time or how much money you can get into Paycor Stadium for. Right now, it's looking like Patriots at Bengals. You can get in for as low as $136. That's down like $25 from the last time I did this read. Not that bad. They have super deals, amazing deals, great deals, all on the site, and they make it super simple to check out, pay, and get to the game. So we're going to do a lot more of these with the Seattle Seahawks coming up because that's going to be a home game. But if you're going out to Cincinnati, make sure you check out Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app today, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, that is code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
All right, we're going to close this one out with some quick hitters. We're going to try to answer as many of your questions as possible. If you do enter them, make sure to use a question mark. It just makes it easier for me because I can just, Apple find and scroll through. So The first one we've got, let's see, this is a good one. When Kendrick Bourne gets back, do you try and trade KJ? When Kendrick Bourne gets back, do you try to trade KJ Osborne or Kayshon Boutte? That is going to be a very interesting situation because you got Jalen Reagor on the practice squad right now. They've already got 6 receivers. Are they going to keep 7 like they did last year? How do you see that working out?
It's a good question. I've been thinking about this a little bit too, because obviously Kendrick Bourne's going to play when he's back. So you got to figure this one out. Now, I would say that it might be a problem that takes care of itself. And I don't mean to make light of injuries or anything like that, but somebody gets hurt and then all of a sudden it's a little easier to figure out how to finagle the roster. But would I look to trade one of those guys? I guess you always pick up the phone, but I just don't know how much real value either one of those players is going to have. Kendrick Bourne's the one with value, right? Like he's the good NFL player that's on an affordable contract. So if anybody's going to get traded, it's like that Niners trade we heard for Brandon Ayuk, a couple picks and Kendrick Bourne for a stud receiver. It's more likely he's the one that gets dealt and not the ones that don't have a ton of value.
Yeah, this seems very much like a wait and see kind of situation. I'm sure the Patriots probably have a couple options in mind, but that's going to be at least a month out from the season. Kendrick Bourne hasn't even practiced yet, so we really don't know when we're going to see him on the field. So if all these guys are healthy, with Kayshon Boutte, it feels like they really do think they've got something in him. He said himself, he sees himself making the team. Obviously, all these receivers are confident, but even the way they've handled him, like everybody said it was Jalen Reagor versus Kayshon Boutte on the bubble. Reagor's got the special teams value, so he's going to make the roster, but they clearly do like Kayshon Boutte. He ran a ton with the younger guys when they would have like Drake May with Polk and Baker. So it seems like someone they really do want to develop and see what they have in him. And then KJ Osborne, like you said, I don't know how much value he has on the trade market, but he is on a 1-year deal. He and Kendrick Bourne are extremely redundant. Neither one of them you really want playing X receiver, although there is some overlap in this offense. So I would think it's him if they could move him at all, but I also think they might be stuck in a situation where because they do like KJ Osborne, you end up just having to keep 7 receivers, maybe, take a hit of depth somewhere else. Yeah. All right. How much can we trust Joey Sly? Mr. K1, is he going to lose us games like Ryland did last year?
Well, to be fair, Ryland lost the game against the Giants, and that's why Drake May is a Patriot. So I don't want to get I don't want to get too much on Chad Ryland because he did us all a big favor, right? No, in all seriousness, what I like about Joey Sly is that he does have range on his field goals that maybe Chad Ryland didn't have. So I'm still a little bit weary about his consistency within 45 yards and if he's going to make all of those. But in terms of now you have that ability to maybe hit a 53-yarder, at the end of a half or to win a game or something like that, that you didn't necessarily have before with Ryland. So that's the one thing I would say he has on Ryland is the distance and the accuracy from 50 plus.
Yeah, Joey Sly has also proven he can kick in the NFL. In whatever capacity, he's done it successfully. And anybody who is in a battle with Chad Ryland, obviously, they're probably not going to go to the Pro Bowl this season. Although he did say, Joey Sly, that he wants to be a top 3 kicker at some point. Also, he's jacked, which should help on these new kickoffs because he's the last line of defense. I'd rather have Joey Sly try to tackle somebody than Chad Ryland. No offense, Chad. Joey just literally looks like a trainer. When he first got to the team, he wasn't wearing anything or like really participating. He was just standing with the kickers. And I was like, what is a trainer doing hanging out with him? Is somebody hurt or like what's going on? And then somebody's like, no, that's literally Joey Sly. So there's my.
Did you see that tackle that LSU kicker made on in the USC game the other night? No. Look that one up. It was that USC has this really good return man. I forget his name off the top of my head, but he had the kicker to beat on a kickoff return, and the kicker made like a really good tackle to get him on the ground. And I was like, I texted Barth, and I was like, did he just get tackled by the kicker? And he was like, yeah, he did.
Barth was definitely fired up for that one.
Oh yeah, you know it.
All right, this is one you actually tweeted about yesterday. Do you think the Patriots signed Caleb Farley, who really over the past few years, his impact has mostly come on special teams when he has been healthy, which obviously is unfortunate considering when he was originally drafted?
Well, look, this is going all the way back to college with Caleb Farley with injuries. He came into the league with I believe it was a back injury, if my memory serves me correctly. It was like a serious one of those. Kind of like Rob Gronkowski, like you weren't sure if it was going to be able to hold up for an NFL career or not. And he was extremely talented, though. And that was abundantly clear. If he was 100% healthy, he had all pro corner type potential. So if you're a team like the Patriots, no one's going to get all hot and bothered if they do sign him, but he's a type of guy that you take on your practice squad and just see if he can make an impression and if he can stay healthy. So I'm in on Caleb Farley just because I'm always in on talent grabs, like wherever you can find it. But we have to keep it in perspective that he's literally never stayed healthy at any level since college. So that's a big one for him.
100%. It would be hard not to get excited with him and Mike Pellegrino because, man, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, that would be tough.
Yeah.
All right. It's going to be one of the last ones. But what does a successful offense look like for the successful season look like for the offense, which is a very good question. I feel like there's a few different answers too.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still in the camp of like, I just want to see some upward trajectory to the offense. I don't know how many points they're going to score or how many yards they're going to gain per game or whatever. But if they can look the part late in the season, and maybe Drake Mason at that point, and he looks the part as well, then you start to feel a little bit better about, let's just get some finishing touches. Obviously, left tackle is not necessarily a finishing touch. That's like a core piece, but left tackle will be invested in the first round. I'm sure next year of the draft. So you kind of have Will Campbell, Kelvin Banks, or whatever in that spot, and then you start to sprinkle on the toppings, right? And you get that number one receiver, and you start to build something. So, what does a successful year for the offense look like? To me, it's in December, January. Do we feel like when we come out of the season, like, all right, we got, May's our quarterback, Polk's a decent receiver, Pop's a decent receiver, and we feel like we're building towards something?
I couldn't agree more. I'm honestly not even going to add a whole lot. It's got to be growth. You need, like you said, you got to end the season in a place where this is really one of my barometers for success, where when they hit free agency or if some big name trade target pops up on the market, is that someone who has any interest in coming to the Patriots, whether you have to throw the bag at them or not? Because as we saw, they literally could not pay for talent this offseason, specifically Brandon Ayuk, despite throwing him a bag. So if you're the kind of destination people or all these guys feel like they would actually want to come to, get you over the edge, that's awesome. If not, it's going to be really hard to feel like this was a season where they went in the right direction offensively. This one's going to be really quick. No. All right, moving on. All right, I'm going to do one more here. You all ask great questions. I'm sorry I can't get to all of them. Maybe next time. But this one, I like this a lot. Who's the most important rookie other than Drake May this season?
It's a good question. I think you can go in a lot of directions with it. I would probably still say Jalen Polk. I know it's easy just to say the second round pick when we take the first round pick out of it, but when I say we, Patriots fans have been starving for receiver talent. And even if he's not a wide receiver one, but he turns out to be like a really good number two receiver, then you have something to build on, like we were just talking about, where you just drop in that number one guy, and now you have a hierarchy that makes sense on the offensive side of the ball. So I still feel like the rookie offensive linemen are obviously important too. And we'll see maybe if Caden Wallace can get into the starting lineup later on in the season. But I can't lie. If Jalen Polk is the real deal, then you feel a whole lot better about this entire thing.
Yeah, it's tough, but I'll just go with Caden Wallace because I feel like either one of those guys is pretty interchangeable to a degree. But if Caden plays well enough, you can start him, and he is not a liability. If anything, he's a net positive, even if there's some up and down play. I think that means that you don't need to rely on Chooks on the right side. Maybe Vidarian Lowe, but I feel like, honestly, they may like Vidarian on the field a bit better than Chooks because of the run blocking specifically, where it's very obvious with Mike and Winnie when Chooks next to each other. They're very different types of players. Chooks plays with a mean streak that you have to respect in the run game. Like, he wants to finish. He wants to set the tone. He's just not a very powerful guy. Caden Wallace, I think, gives you more of that, where if you have him next to Nwenu, then you could really get some movement in the ground game that's more similar to what you get with Nwenu at tackle and then Layden Robinson on the inside. And whether or not Caden Wallace is your left tackle of the future, at least you know one of those bookends is set. Then you have your option on the interior at guard. You kind of figure out City Layden Robinson, who do you really want, or maybe can those guys move around? If you got to get your left tackle in the draft, fine, but at least you got a nice young core of offensive linemen to go into 2025 with. All right, Evan, that was a blast as always, buddy. Appreciate you taking the time. Before I let you go, please remind the people where they can find you and let them know what great stuff you got coming down the pipeline that we got to be looking out for.
Patriots.com. It's pretty easy. It's the name of the team, so that makes it easy.
We
Patriots,
know, Evan, we know.
that came off so much more like condescending than I meant it. Patriots.com. We have PU tomorrow. Patriots catch 22 after PU from 2 to 4 with me and Alex Barth. So you can give us a call and tell us how much of an idiots we both are and all that good stuff. And then it's on to Cincinnati, like literally, like both of us will be there, right, on Sunday. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I've been a couple times there. It's an interesting place. Not really my cup of tea, that part of the country, but I'm looking forward to the game. That's for sure.
Are we going to share a bowl of Skyline chili? I guess we don't have to share it, but that'd be really cute if we
did. we can share it. Like if you want to have 2 spoons, like I'm all for it. At halftime during the last game was 2019, I want to say, when they played the Bengals there, and they had Skyline chili at halftime. It was like the halftime buffet was chili cheese dogs. So be ready for that.
Hopefully it agrees with me. That's all I'm going to say. I've never had it before. I'm just hoping that nothing. Yeah, I'm just hoping nothing crazy happens. All right. Anyway, thanks again, buddy, for joining as always. And thank you all as always for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff that Mike usually asks you to do at the end of the show. And then for my obvious message, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. We will see y'all next time. Peace.